So the magical one is a very important thing. Do you remember? Maybe do you want to talk about it? What is?
I don't
do you remember
what you
what
said, but to me it was, when you say it just reminds me of your inner power.
No, it's good. That's why you're here. The magical one is your energetical field. How you use your thoughts, those are your tools. Mm-hmm. Always remember that this is when you go back into your own inner power, that your thoughts, remember thoughts are energy. Everything is energy. At the subconscious level, we are energy, everything. So especially the thoughts. So when you send a thought in the universe, you're sending a vibration. Because every sound has a form, and every form has a sound, has a reverberation. A thought, just a thought like that, you would think it's not that powerful, but if you keep repeating that thought, and you keep sending it in the universe, and then you add to it with the words, that's part of your magical one, and then you add an emotion attached to it. Emotion are fueled with intense energy, whatever is the intention, because there's always a volition behind it. And then if you add an action to it, so all of this is part of the magical one. Thoughts, words, action, emotion, create your energy. And it goes the other way around too. If you are highly vibrating into your own being, because let's say you chant a lot of mantra, you do a lot of japa, you do a lot of meditation, and you do a lot of intense sadhana with kriya, as we have spoken, then it also affects your intention, it affects your volition, it affects how you vibrate in the universe. So vibrating at a higher frequency. So the more you send very powerful thought, fueled with beautiful emotion and feelings, gear, like channel to the highest, with passion to the divine, what we call in Bhakti Yoga, that you're sending this divine love, you're radiating this love, and when you bless, that's what you do, because we bless with our thoughts, we bless with our words, we manifest and we create. So this is your magical one. So always remember you have that inner power to manifest and create. But what is most beautiful and most powerful, beloved, is when you embrace your divine presence. It is going back into this existential moment of experiencing your breath, and to really calm down everything, and to bring yourself, and it's a practice. You can, like I was saying, Devi Ma, you can pierce all through those Maya kosha, and in that moment you can experience your blissful nature, your existential nature, and that is your divine presence. When everything is in balance, you know, your masculine and your feminine energy is like, everything is aligned and the energy is flowing nicely, and you're completely in a state of calmness, a state of pure consciousness, and there is no thought coming through. And through the breath, when you come back and you bring yourself to this moment, to your breath, is where you really found your presence. There is a presence there, and that divine presence is the creator, the divinity at the very source of all of us, of who we are, because ego will always create separation, right? Ego will always create resistance. See in your life how when you feel resistant, it's not your divine presence. is that you allowing your personality to lead the show. And so, to go back to your divine presence, what is it really to embrace your divine presence? Is to go back to the very core and to be very humble and to open up and allow yourself to be vulnerable. I know it can be very painful, but that's the only way you can break through all and allowing purification to take place. For people who are going through Kundalini purification, it can be challenging. I mean, because to be there in the divine presence is like when you have so much garbage that you carry, to completely let go and come back to that divine presence. So the first step is go back inside, and the way to empower yourself is render yourself like a child in a state of wonderment. I don't know. I want to know. And surrender it in that moment, in a state of complete humbleness. And that's hard for people to go in that state of humbleness. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Because ego always finds its way to drive. Ego is so subtle, even though it's not tangible. But when you look at what really is ego, it's just it serves a sense of survival, a sense of I amness, that I am here in physical form, and it forms all those identification. But divine presence will always bring you back and tell you, no, my child, this is not who you are. Listen to your soul, listen to your spirit, how deeply is longing and crying to return always to its divine presence. Divine presence is not just being in a state of humbleness, staying so open and so receptive. Is to really go beyond everything and really trust in a state of abandonment, to be able to bow down. I mean really physically in a state, but it's more than that. It's an emotional state. It's an energetical state where you can really bow down. And that's what's the beauty about suffering and pain. That it can be so transformative, because when you suffer so much, it will bring you to unity, like it has done to Devi Ma, in such a state of surrender and humbleness, and that's where you can meet your divine presence, because you allowed room, your soul, your spirit allowed room to breathe and make a distance from ego, who always want to lead with the sense of self, always wanted to affirm, to be right, to lie, to dislike. So when you look at who I am, I remember when I was in Varanasi. I'll share a little story. Varanasi is a sacred place in India. It's right by the Ganga. It's a very powerful place. In the yogic tradition and in Hinduism also, they burn the body. And they do it right there by the fire. I mean, some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Varanasi, and maybe have been there. Have you been there? Yes. And when I was there in 2012, I will never forget, I could see, we were on the river, right? I could see the spirit. They were like bubble, they were all kind of bubble of different size of light. And it was even captured on our camera. You could see it. It was all different light, small and big one. And I could see it with both of my eyes and my third eyes. I could feel the spirit because there were so many spirits. And what was phenomenal, you could even see on the photo, it was so ethereal and so mystical. And so many times Devi Ma has had many experiences with different spirits, including with my own mother. So the point of this is just a garment. It's pure consciousness. So when you go back to who really you are, how can you trust and allow your divine presence to lead the way? Complete trust. And what Devi Ma mean by complete trust is like, it takes courage because your mind will say something, but you don't listen. Even if you're in pain, just go through the pain. Trust the process. You have to trust the process. If you cry, you scream, whatever it is, just throw it. Throw it to the Divine Mother. Offer it. Allow yourself to be courageous and to trust the process, to allow your divine presence to come. Because ego will suffocate, will start, I'm here, it will want to take over. And that's why practicing mindfulness, and especially being sadhana, is so crucial. Because you burn the candle at both sides. You could accelerate your spiritual awakening and enlightenment so fast. You're full blossoming. And there's the story of that little girl who was born, her name was Amrita. Amrita means, in the yogic tradition, the nectar of God. And we do have that nectar. When you get very intoxicated, it drips from your pineal gland. And it's the fruit of enlightenment. You know, it's just, it intoxicates you into your Satchitananda. Sat, we have mentioned that Sat stands for absolute truth. Chit, omnipotent, omnipresent, infinite consciousness, and Ananda, bliss, for our true spirit of who we are when we have merged one with our Creator, whatever we call it by any name. So Amrita was born and she was in full bliss at a very early age. And she grew up and she was in the land of samsara, the land of misery and suffering and pain. And it was hard for her to grow. She felt like the more as she was growing, she was losing her intoxication of bliss, bombarded by so many events and abuse and neglect, and her father abandoned her when she was 11 years old. It was very abusive and beat her up and verbally abusive and to the whole family, and a big scandal took place in her house. And the father almost ran over the mother with the two daughters. And it was a big tragedy. And Amrita just felt devastated, and she saw her father in the middle of the night when she was 11 years old, leaving her whole family. And she was so traumatized by the event that she completely lost a state of blissfulness. She forgot who she was. She fell into the despair and the misery and the darkness of the soul, and she started hating her father. Hatred just grew into her. Is that a story that sounds familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the characters are different in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Think about your life. Are you Amrita? Amrita was 11 years old. She saw her father running over her mother with a car at 3 o'clock in the middle of the night. He almost killed his mother and his sister. It traumatized her. And that anger and that hatred grew in her. And then she repressed it. And as she grew older, she started falling into depression. And she, instead of surrendering that hatred, all those negative, talk about low energy frequency. She had forgotten she had the power with a magical wand. That she could change her vibration, she could change her emotion, and to go back to divine love, and to forgive her father. And then she fell into a deep depression when she was 32 years old. And she realized that she needed to forgive her father because she was able to go back to her divine presence and experience divine love in her heart. And despite all that darkness and that pain, she realized that she was divine love, that she was bliss, and that she needed to reconnect with her father and forgive him. And she didn't know who he was, where he was, if he was still alive. Over 14 years later, Amrita picked up the phone, tracked down her father, and flew back to her country of origin and met her father face to face. And it was the most beautiful divine moment of forgiveness, of deep embracing of divine presence. What do you think Amrita did?
Like she flew back to her country of origin. She forgave
Speak
her father.
louder.
She forgave her father. She flew back to her country of origin.
That's right. But in the process, she trusted her divine presence. That takes courage.
It's very hard what she did.
Very hard. And not only that, she was in tremendous pain. She had no idea how this being was going to receive her. But this is the pure example of what it is to trust your divine presence. Mm-hmm. Is that you got to take the leap. When you have an inner knowing that comes inside, mm-hmm. It will bug you. It will bug you. It will bug you. It will bug you again and again. Mm-hmm. Something will tell you. But pay attention because that is your divine presence. Within you, your own divinity is guiding you, telling you. So if you learn how to sit quiet and really listen deep to the longing of your soul, you will hear your inner knowing. Because your ego will say, no, I'm not going to do that. Right. What the heck with this man? He put my family through hell. He put my mother in a state of serious depression. He almost killed her. I mean, she could have gone on and gone on and gone on mm-hmm. to put all the low vibrancy energy. But on the other hand, she remembered her father was divine and that he was handicapped. He was vibrating our own low energy. He was wounded. And she was able to allow her divine presence to come forward, to be a mother or be a divine father, to embrace this being at a soul level. And she did. And you know what happened? In that process, she trusted her own divine presence. But that required listening deep. It required incredible humbleness, receptivity, and openness to really listen really deep inside and to be courageous.
Definitely.
And when she forgave in that moment, she liberated herself from the karma. Because energetically, there was a huge release on both her father and her. And she was vibrating at a very high energy. So this is returning to your divine presence. This is really trusting. In the life of Amrita, she at one point went into a severe depression and attempted to commit suicide. But when she came out of it, she came back to life. And she remembered again who she was. And she deeply empowered her divine presence and trusted. And she drove from one side of the country to the other side and completely changed her life and listened to her inner power. So, Amrita is you, and is you, and is you, and this one, and you. And all the character change. And it's a perpetual story that you hear all the time from the character people when they allow their own personality to lead the way. Let me see, there's one more story and we're going to move on. I will do a session of question and answer because I can see you have some questions.
Yeah.
Let's see, what time is it? We're doing well. Do you have a question? Do you want to ask a question? Let's do it.
I was just wondering if, because she became in a state of her divine self and she could...
Speak a little louder.
Because she became in a state of her pure self.
Yeah.
And she could transcend this darkness that her father was in. Did she also heal her father at that moment?
She healed her father, she healed herself. But what she did, she blessed her father. In the process of blessing him, she released her karmic bond. She released her own father and herself because she realized she was a worst enemy for all those 14 years that she did not forgive him. She was living with this hatred inside. And a rumination, all consciously or unconsciously. She forgot she had a magical wand, that she had inner power. She had made herself a puppet, a victim to her life circumstances. She was her choice. She could live in divine love at a higher frequency, or she could live really in the state of ego and separativeness, in the illusion of separativeness. But there was, at the deep core of her, she was really able to hear and listen. And I bet you, all of you have those glimpses. But maybe you're not courageous enough, or maybe you're not humble enough, because it really required to really bow down and say, I don't know. And I surrender to my Creator, whatever you call it, to the Divine Mother. And I'm willing to listen. And even if I go through pain, It's a boundary. My boundary are being pushed. This is what is empowering your divine presence, is you allowing yourself to break those boundaries. And when you start breaking those boundaries, it's incredibly powerful. So,
I have a question. Can she have just forgiven her father without journeying back?
speak louder, my beloved.
Well, can she just forgive her father in her heart instead of journeying back? I mean, 14 years and having gone through was probably wronged in a big way.
It was probably what?
She was probably wronged in a big way.
I cannot hear you. It's probably...
She had a lot of pain put upon her by her father.
No, my father did not do anything. That's, you see, you live into, again, he did things. Of course he did. And what he did was wrong. Don't get me wrong. Let's see that. Objectively, event happened that was definitely miserable for everyone around. But she chose to be hurt by it. It's okay for a while because it's not an easy thing when you're 11 years old. But Amrita grew up with a lot of hatred and anger. But that was her choice. She was vibrating at a low energy, so she was not empowering herself in her own divine presence to allow it to rise, to vibrate higher energy. Amrita had the choice. She could have forgiven her father like within a year or two, or maybe 5 years later, but she lived with it for over 14 years. It's a long time.
Yes.
Remember, beloved, nobody hurts you. Nobody does anything to you. It always comes from inside. The experience is always from inside. It's how you vibrate, how you take it, and how you see it. Some life event will have an impact, but if you're going to carry it on your shoulder with the wounds for the rest of your life, then you're disempowering your divine presence completely. But sooner you realize that everything is coming from the outside, and if you allow yourself to be a puppet and carrying that low vibration, then who's hurting who?
Yourself.
You see?
But it's hard. It is hard.
It is hard, but what it requires a lot of mindfulness, from alertness to mindfulness, to consciousness, to deep awareness. And that is the path of the divine alchemist, to really be able to really see with this perspective how you're hurting yourself on a constant basis, the way you think, the way you talk, and the way you're allowing yourself to be a puppet. When you realize that and you practice that, you can cut the string very fast. But Amrita was returned to her divine presence. She liberated what Shubi was saying. Yes, of course, she could have forgiven her father in her heart. But it was much more powerful for her to be there with them and to embrace him, because embracing him was embracing his divine presence. When she hugged him, it was blessing him, and it was embracing her own divine presence. And it was much more powerful because energetically she gave such a gift to her father. If she would have done it only in her heart, her father, even though energetically he would have felt it, but since he was still alive, for her, she listened to her divine presence and she followed her inner knowing. She knew it was the right thing to do. So, look at your life right now. Amrita can be a boy, a girl, doesn't matter. The character are different. The garments are different. It can be a spouse. It can be a mother. It can be a child. A child who come and tell you, I hate you. Get away from me. You're smarting me. I can't take it anymore. Then empower your divine presence. Don't get caught up into that low frequency energy. And guess what? Often it can be your own self. That constant fear, because when really, and this is what I feel like it's extremely important to talk about, is fear. Fear of your own self and fear that you have created, because fear is everywhere, especially now with the pandemic and the international crisis, the economy. Fear is the collective consciousness of now, much more than maybe 10 years ago. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
So if you become very mindful, be careful what you're consuming on a daily basis, because you are consuming a lot of fear. The Buddhas have said that thousands of years ago, to become aware what you're consuming on a daily basis, on the social media, among friends, among family members, but the consumption of your own mind also. Because a lot of the fear either is self-created from not using your divine magical wand, not being an alchemist, because we are in charge of our own biochemistry. We can generate that chemistry inside of bliss. Or fears can come unconsciously or consciously from the outside. And a lot of it comes from the outside. So when you allow your divine presence, also you become very vigilant and you use viveka, discernment in what you ingest on a daily basis with a group of friends who you are hanging out with or you're interacting with. Social media also, you have to be very careful, because you don't even realize you're consuming a lot. And so that's why chanting a lot of mantra is so crucial, and doing a lot of sadhana and walking meditation and contemplation, and to go back to your breath like we did, so crucial. So close your eyes just for 1 minute. Ask yourself, in your own life, who are the character of your life? What are your fears? And we'll do a little process. We'll do a guided meditation in a few minutes, and we will be doing a process, but just take a moment and reflect also on 3 sankalpa. Sankalpa is a higher intention of what you want to bring to yourself for the new year. For yourself. A forgiveness to your own self. Letting go of fear that you have created that are not there. Maybe self-hatred that is not real. Any fear, any hurt that you have caused to your own self. No one has hurt you, beloved.